Over in the pages of Marvel Comics, this seasoned creative team of Jonathan Hickman and Valerio Schiti are set to redefine Marvel's pantheon of God characters. It's been really interesting to see individuals like Wynn recently get introduced over in Free Comic Book Day alongside some of the other agents of the powers that be, as well as the natural order of things. My name is Arako Braddock, and today, let's go ahead and explore if Marvel's highly anticipated God series is able to live up to the massive amount of marketing. Before we get deeper into the video, I want to encourage you to consider supporting the channel by subscribing and hitting the like button over on this video. Jonathan Hickman reinvents the cosmology of the Marvel Universe. What happens when the powers that be meet the natural order of things? The infinite détente between the natural order of things and the powers that be nears an end. Old acquaintances are reunited during a Babylon event. The Lion of Wolves throws the worst parties. Don't look under the table. There's a John Wilkes Booth penny on the ground. The enormous extra-sized first issue features Doctor Strange, who, while not boring at all, is easily the most boring person in the book. Of course, God's #1 is written over from Jonathan Hickman, featuring artwork from Valerio Schiti. We have colors from Marte Gracia, letters from VC's Travis Lanham, as well as a gorgeous cover coming in over from Mateus Manhanini. Absolutely love the cover that we can see the Stephen Strange-esque looking character of Wynn standing really confidently over in the foreground of the cover here. I want to extend a fast thank you over to Adventures in Poor Taste and take a look at some of these preview pages over from artist Valerio Schiti. Really thought this sequence over in the Library of Worlds really late in the comic book series was among some of the best art that Schiti got to deliver. I think alongside the party sequence featured a little bit early in the issue, this was one of the best moments, capturing the full scope of what this storyline centered around the God characters bring to the table here. I also love that sense of architecture that Schiti designed over on the page as well. The amount of characters in the background are still really easy to see and quite legible, which I think is assisted over from the colors coming in from Marte Gracia. I also love the panel bleeds over from Stephen Strange at the very bottom of the page as well here. Over on this next page, we get to see a little bit of information teased about the upcoming Babylon event. This was also a sequence that took place really late over in the comic book issue. But again here, it was really thrilling to get the full scope of what the Babylon event was bringing over to the end of the narrative. I love the uses of panel borders that Schiti implies throughout the comic book page. I also am really appreciating this panel bleed over from Doctor Strange himself. Also love the fact that Clea Strange is featured prominently over on this page as well. There's a ton of fun Marvel Magic user cameos over in this series as well. Really happy that Marvel's editorial kind of worked alongside Schiti and author Jonathan Hickman to ensure that all these characters are featured prominently over in this brand new God series. I think Amadeus Cho is a great character to employ humor throughout some of the pages of Gods. I really hope that Hickman will continue to lean into him more as a character, because I think his comedic undertones really complement what Hickman's script is trying to bring out over in these select scenes. Well, I absolutely love some of the artwork over in God's #1 from Valerio Schiti. I wasn't as impressed with the writing of Jonathan Hickman. I think the dialogue in particular really holds Gods back from achieving greatness over in the series. The way that the character of Wynn discusses his relationship with Aiko Maki across this comic book series, I think really sheds some of the nuance and subtext of what Jonathan Hickman is trying to write over in this title. It feels like Gods places too much of an emphasis on this one singular relationship as opposed to this epic conflict with the Babylon event. The opening sequence over with Doctor Strange and Wynn has already been realized over in the Free Comic Book Day issue, and getting this sequence reprinted again is a little tedious. Also, This same sequence is recaptured a little bit later in the issue. This is a scene over with Winn and Doctor Strange that you've seen countless times before, where the duo are discussing some of their morality over across the Marvel Universe here. Now, I did think it was interesting that Jonathan Hickman returned to this plot point at a later timeline and sort of introduces a nonlinear element over to some of the aspects of gods. But the way that this cliffhanger is followed up over on the final page really detracted some of my enjoyment from the story as well. I ultimately don't think Jonathan Hickman was able to craft a set of dialogue for Winn and Doctor Strange that capture the really interesting themes of the comic book as well here. I honestly think that throughout some of the pages of God's #1, there's all these really subtle moments of humor that end up falling flat over on their face. I do appreciate the camaraderie that Winn and Dimitri have with one another, but I ultimately found here that the relationship scenes between Winn and Eiko Maki were written so on the nose here that it really detracted from so much interesting subtext that Hickman could have introduced over in the comic book page. So at the end of the day, I think I find myself way more mixed on God's issue 1 than I would have liked. While I do think that there's a lot of issues over with the narrative, I still think that there's some great scenarios and the book has a really interesting personality and great sense of art, not only from main interior artist Valerio Schiti, but also from the colors coming in from Marte Gracia. I'm really interested to see some of the future scenarios about where this book goes, and I also don't think it would necessarily be that difficult to improve the writing of gods over time. It feels like if author Jonathan Hickman had a more concise narrative and was able to exercise more restraint over in some of the dialogue, that so many sequences across this issue could have been salvaged. I really hope that moving forward, Jonathan Hickman will not play into such obvious comic book tropes like a fizzled out relationship and continue to find the nuance and subtext over in comic book sequences. Also, in terms of the art team here, I really think that the amount of characters that Schiti and Gracia worked with are really commendable over on the page, and really do think that the amount of content over in this issue is quite amazing, aside from those reprinted free comic book day issues that readers have seen again and again and again over in this narrative here. Well, I do think the future of Gods could be bright. It just depends on the overall execution. And while I do think that some of the larger ideas behind this Gods reboot are really tantalizing, I think the sense of restraint needs to be exercised in terms of the dialogue. I want to know from you, did you like Gods #1 more than I did? What were some of your thoughts on the various scenarios and pantheon of gods showing up across this issue? Let me know down in the comments below. Thank you so much for coming to watch our video review over for Gods #1. Thanks so much, and I'll see you soon. Bye.